This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Riley Smith.
Good day and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Today is Friday, July 19th of 2024. We're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I talk with Iowa State climatologist Dr. Justin Glisan about recent weather that we've had here in Iowa. We had a hot weekend the past weekend, and then a derecho came through and broke a lot of that humidity that we had from that. Of course, that storm producing a few tornadoes as well. We talk about some of the reasons behind that and how that storm was able to move so quickly. But first, before we get into any of that, let's take a look at the closing markets.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
At the end of another trading day in the ag marketplace, we're here with Curt Kimmel of agmarket.net. Curt, what do we see going on in the grain markets today as we end off the week in another week of the ag marketplace?
About like watching paint dry almost. It was like a feeling you're at a ball game or in a game and you're just getting your rear end kicked and you want to hurry up and just get it over with. You've gone through your bullpen, let's go home. But the market started out firm on ideas that really no trade or policies in the Republican convention speeches. Mostly what was said was been promoted before, kind of a positive thing. So that gave the market a little confidence in holding in there other than the outside markets. I mean, the metals took it on the chin there for a while. But going into midday, quiet. Funds bought 6,500 contracts of wheat, 900 contracts of corn, 1,200 contracts of beans. They turned sellers in the beans after that midday. They did sell 2,600 meal contracts, about 1,700 soybean oil contracts going into midday there. Demand, it seems like a cloudy demand outlook, particularly in the soy complex, is just kind of keeping things in check for the most part. It's kind of neat, though. We saw 510,000 bean sell there on Thursday, 150 meal Thursday, another 150 here this morning, meal and meal cake. So we just need more of it. Probably the bright spot was the wheat trying to hang in there. World wheat values more than anything. Still a lot of uncertainty on the Russian-Ukraine situation there. They've been in a drought. They're undercutting everyone. Then, too, the French wheat, quality issues there. Kind of watching that. Here in the U.S., we're fairly well done for wheat harvest for the most part, particularly here in the East in the soft red wheat. But, boy, we're moving up into the spring wheat belt, and guys are just fascinated with what they're seeing. They're expected monster spring wheat yields. So we'll see, if they can pull that off here as we move more into activity here over the next 2 to 3 weeks. This morning here in central Illinois, I about had to put a jacket on. It was a little chilly. And, man, when you get that type of weather here in mid-July, it's fairly favorable for the most part without the heat. We've had a little bit of storm damage here and there, but analysts are upping the yield estimates. The national average has been 181. Some are 182, 183 as a nation. There's some as high as 184. The soybean yield here on this last report was 52 bushels the acre. There's some analysts as high as 53.5 to 54 bushels per acre. So there's a lot of optimism out there. Other than going to the county fairs, hot and heavy now, we're seeing a little bit of bug pressures. Maphid and some guys are watching this tar spot, well advertised. So we'll continue to see if that keeps a thorn in our budget here, having to put a little chemical on or not. Commodity funds remain short the market. Hopefully they'll want to cover those short positions here as we go into early fall. On the technical side, man, it's just been a straight down slope. Corn for the week finished down 10 cents. Got to watch this last low here at 403. There's some reversals up out of there. I have a feeling there's some stops under there, so keep an eye on 403 December futures. Soybeans down 29 cents for the week. These last lows need to hold too. Wheat, December Chicago wheat was down 7 3/4 for the week, and they'll watch this week's low on Tuesday as some support levels to keep in mind in through here. Next week, crop conditions report, for the most part, expected to show a little bit more improvement in some of the areas there, Mark.
All right, and then on the other side of the ag marketplace in the livestock complex, how did cattle and hogs trade today?
Not too bad. They held in there. The thing about beef demand is 4th of July, and all of a sudden, where did everybody go? We went from good demand there in the 4th, and all of a sudden we're seeing everybody go to the burger route. Steak sales are really, really slow. So we're in a situation where, we've got to push Labor Day demand here up fairly quickly. There's just a fear this market can roll over. Internationally, we're seeing Brazil export a lot of beef, Chinese demand's down. So a lot of moving parts in through here, but there is some fear out there. Cattle feed report, expect on feed 101, placements 97.2, marketing's 91.7. So we'll see where that comes in. Box beef cutouts slipped a little this week on the weekly chart. Cattle did hold in there, up about 72 cents on the week. Hogs, they were up about $3. Followed through on last week's technical reversal up. We just need to see some giddy up in there. Loins up $2 on the week. Hams hanging in there. Bellies, the bacon's 130. So you got tomatoes getting with it. You might want to get some bacon.
All right, Curt, lots of great information today. For those of our listeners who would like to get in touch and learn more from the folks at agmarket.net, how can they do that?
1-800-779-1515 is our local number, or else agmarket.net. Click on Intel.
Great market analysis as always, Curt, and we look forward to chatting again soon.
Very good. Have a good weekend.
That again was Curt Kimmel of agmarket.net. We'll take a look at how the numbers closed through the market window at iowaagnet.com. At the close, September corn down 3/4 cent at $3.90 August soybeans down 1 1/4 at $10.97 August soybean meal down 40 cents at $3.36.80. August soybean oil up 11 cents at $46.56. Chicago wheat up 7 1/2 at $5.42 3/4. Kansas City hard red wheat up 7 1/4 at $5.70 even. Minneapolis spring wheat up 9 1/4 at $6.09 3/4. September oats up 6 1/4 at $3.36 3/4. On the Merc, August live cattle up 85 cents at $183.10. August feeders down 62 at $255.60. August lean hogs up 20 cents at $91.57. Pork cutout up 32 cents at $102.75. And August class 3 milk down 24 cents at $19.93. And that's been a check of the markets here on Ag Matters PM. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, I talk with Iowa's state climatologist, Dr. Justin Glisan. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Well, there was a very sudden derecho earlier this week, or at least it felt very sudden, but there were actually some climatological reasons as to why that was able to develop so quickly. I talked with Iowa State climatologist Dr. Justin Glisan about a bit of that weather and more. We're here with Iowa State climatologist Dr. Justin Glisan for our weekly chat and update on the latest weather patterns here in Iowa. First off, Justin, great to have you on. It's been an interesting weather week. Well, I guess the weather in general since we last talked has been very interesting. And obviously that was highlighted by a derecho and a tornado that we saw through Des Moines just earlier this week. But first, before we talk about that, we had a bit of a heat wave come through the state. What did we see from that, the temperatures, and what was causing that?
Yep. So yes, good to be with you, Riley. So we can tie the heat that we saw over the weekend with the derecho that started here in Iowa. We had a big heat dome that was sitting over the Midwest. So you have two mechanisms for warmer temperatures. You have air from the southern part of the United States moving up, so warmer air. But in a stable high pressure system like that heat dome, you have descending air that warms compressionally as the pressure rises when you get towards the surface, so secondary heating. So we saw temperatures in the low to mid 90s and then overnight lows in the 70s. So 10, 15 degrees above where we should be. Now, before that heat wave, we were actually averaging 4 degrees below normal for the month. And adding in those 90-degree days, we've actually dropped that average to 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're 2.2 degrees below average. So still a cooler January, or cooler July. But when you're talking about that heat dome, that's actually an axis for what we call ridge riders to form and then move along. And as we saw, discrete supercells form in central Iowa, and then they coalesced into a line in eastern Iowa, and then just rapidly moved through Illinois, Indiana, and into Michigan over 500-mile path length. So when we define a derecho, it has to be at least 240 to 400 miles in length, 60 miles wide, and within that swath, a majority of the wind gusts 58 miles per hour or above. Now, also of note is an EF1 tornado through the western side of the Des Moines Metro. In fact, about a half mile southwest of my house. And the storm that had produced that tornado was moving 50 miles per hour. So the path length of that tornado was 7 miles into the city, very rapidly moving and very hard to get a warning on that tornado. Lead time was about 2 to 3 minutes. Luckily, no fatalities. I don't think there were any injuries, a lot of tree damage, some roof damage, but overall, it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, I think especially for that tornado, it was just the pictures in the aftermath were a lot scarier than what had actually come through the city. But it's not often that you see a tornado of any reasonable strength like that, or a tornado in general, come through the city like that. I mean, conditions were just right, but I mean, is it just in general the city itself that usually kind of the geography of it protects it from tornadoes, or why is it that we usually see cities are generally safe from tornadoes being able to rip through?
Well, you have to remember earlier this year, we also had a tornado on the southeast side in Pleasant Hill. When we talk about metropolitan areas and tornadoes, we saw, I think, 4 or 5 confirmed tornadoes with this derecho line in Chicago. So metropolitan areas can be hit by tornadoes. You think of Oklahoma City, Dallas, Minnesota, Minneapolis, all these cities have been hit by tornadoes. So as we expand that urban footprint, we're seeing more strikes on suburban areas, but there's really no mechanism that can protect a city from tornadoes. We talk about the heat island effect with all the concrete and metal in a urban area. Warmer temperatures, we think of more stable flow, but overall micro scale features like thunderstorms and tornadoes are not really impacted by urban areas. They can strike anywhere.
So since those storms, it kind of broke the humidity, and we've had a very pleasant weather since then. Looking at the upcoming weather here soon, are we looking for that nice weather pattern to continue for a little bit?
Yes, thankfully, in giving our National Weather Service forecasters some time off from this active weather that we've had over the last season. 110 tornadoes officially. The record's 120 tornadoes for the state. 44 we average in a given year. So we're looking at the next 7 days. Temperatures in the low to mid 80s, overnight lows where they should be in the mid 60s. Lower relative humidity and nice weather. It looks like maybe a few chances of rain over the weekend, but overall, much better weather, comfortable weather, in fact.
And of course, that weather is also great for pollination, as we are going through right now for the corn and soybean crops. In general, we do want to see a little bit of that moisture continue on through. We were worried for a little bit of dryness there, but so far, when we're looking at pollination and how the crops are standing. This weather's been very favorable, right?
Absolutely ideal weather. I mean, unless you're in the flooded regions in northwestern and north central Iowa or had some hail damage, overall the crop looks good, and these are great conditions for tasseling and pollination. So we're lucking out in terms of the amount of moisture that we received in spring. In fact, you look at the drought monitor depiction this morning, we finally removed that last part of D0, abnormally dry conditions, from Clinton and Scott County. And this has been 219 consecutive weeks of abnormal dryness somewhere in the state. So you'd have to go back to May 5th, 2020 to see a completely clear map. It's been pretty remarkable how wet we've been to begin the year and over the spring and into early summer.
And speaking of how the crops have been, it's very interesting, kind of going back to the derecho that went through. Not a ton of reports of very significant crop damage that came from this recent round of storms. Now, of course, we have seen some pictures of shredded corn from some isolated hailstorms and other damage that came through, but by and large, it kind of seemed like the crops got a little lucky from this recent line of storms that went through the Midwest.
Yeah, and given how active the beginning of the season was in terms of severe weather, uh, the higher the corn, the more closed the canopy for soybeans. That's where you get a lot more damage from hail and wind. So we think of the August 10th derecho in 2020. Corn was at its peak, soybean canopies were closed, and we saw epic damage across the state. Luckily, with the past event that we've seen in other severe weather events, we haven't seen as widespread of wind damage and hail damage. And speaking with our field agronomists in eastern Iowa, pleasantly surprised by the lack of widespread damage. So again, very lucky to have that type of situation given how extreme weather has been recently.
All right, Justin, lots of great information today. For those of our listeners, especially our farmer listeners, who would like to get in touch and even potentially offer a field scouting report for field conditions, weather conditions, how can they do that?
Yep. So my direct line is 515-281-8981. Google Iowa Climatology Bureau. It'll have all my contact information, all our historic reports, weather information, climate outlooks, anything you would need to be a weather nerd out there. But of course, please contact me if you need any type of information or if you want to share what you're seeing on your farms and in your production.
All right, Justin, thanks so much for the chat as always, and we'll speak again next week.
Looking forward to it, Riley. Thank you.
That again was the state climatologist for Iowa, Dr. Justin Glisan. That's all the time we have for today's episode of Ag Matters PM. Thanks again for tuning in. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. Also follow us on social media at Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and TikTok, and find our video content as well as previous episodes of AM PM on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to see when those videos go live. Don't forget as well our free morning, midday, and closing market podcasts, as well as the Pod to Potential podcast and the Iowa Ag Matters podcast. Find those on your favorite podcasting service at Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Riley Smith. On behalf of Quentin Slater, Mark Magnuson, Andy Peterson, and Dustin Huffman, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.